Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about this more for W-2 employees. So if you are a traditional employee working somewhere to get a W-2 wages, how can you do anything to lower your taxes? So I get this question a lot. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do with just your W-2. It kind of is what it is. You work for compensation. That compensation is reported on the Form W-2 and submitted to the IRS, and there's nothing that you can do to change it. Not really. So then the question becomes, well, what else can I do to lower my taxes? So when let's say you're making $100,000 in W-2 wages and you're going to have, let's say, about $1,000 a month withheld from your paycheck to pay prepay your income tax to the federal government. So you're going to pay approximately $1,200 throughout the year for income taxes prepaid to the government as it is withheld from your paycheck throughout the year. That calculation is regulatory based. So there is a table out there that says if you are single, mark one on your W-4, then and you make between this amount and this amount, they're required to withhold a certain amount from your paycheck. So that like when you fill out your actual W-4, there is an entire table calculation done, and all the payroll provider softwares have this table built into their software, so the software knows exactly the amount that is required to be withheld from your paycheck to cover your taxes based on how you actually end up filing your taxes. So as long as you fill out your W-4 correctly, the theory is that you will hopefully come to a pretty close correct amount that you've prepaid the government for your taxes, so that you would neither be due a refund nor or owe the government money when you file your actual income tax return. Now, that historically hasn't always worked out. As there's updates to the tax code and things change, sometimes that table isn't 100% correct. And so there's been times when people have owed a lot of money, even though they had filled out their W-4 correctly at the beginning of the year. People forget to update their W-4 sometimes. That will cause issues. But in theory, if you are paid X amount in W-2 wages, you should have withheld from your paycheck the right amount and prepaid to the government to cover your income taxes. So the question then becomes, how do you get some of that back? So then we have to change your tax strategy. So how do we lower your income taxes? Well, the best way to do that when you're a W-2 employee is to create a side hustle business. Now, I find that a lot of people already have something in place. For example, let's say you have a wood shop where you like to tinker around with things and you make a few things out of wood and you sell them on eBay, or you go to a local farmer's market, or you have some chickens and you're selling the eggs on the side of the road. You have a hobby that you like to do. Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's collecting sports memorabilia. Maybe it's creating YouTube videos. And a lot of times, these hobbies can result in some sort of income. And most people go, well, I'm not even going to report that to the government because I don't want to have to pay taxes on that. So let's talk about that. First, you're committing tax evasion by doing that. The law states that you are required to report all income, period. And so by not reporting that income, you're actually committing a felony, and you've now done tax evasion. But if you report it correctly, you can actually create a business with a loss that then deducts from your W-2 wages. And so if you have $100,000 in W-2 wages, but you create a $5,000 loss in the business, your taxes are calculated and paid on $95,000, or calculated and reported on $95,000, but you had income tax withholding paid in on $100,000. And so there's this $5,000 loss that you're now going to get a refund for. So that's how you end up creating a way to get a refund. Well, how do you do that? So by default, items like that, a hobby that you're making some money on, it is falls underneath the hobby rules. Well, the hobby rules are horrible. You are required to report all your income and pay taxes on it, but the expenses are what we call miscellaneous itemized deductions. One, you have to be itemizable before you can even report them. And two, we're no longer allowed to take miscellaneous itemized deductions under the current tax act. So basically, they disappear, and you just pay the tax on the revenue you made without taking really any deductions. Well, that's no fun. That would be why people don't want to claim it. So you have to change the nature of it from a hobby to a business. Well, how do we do that? The rule is that a business has to have a profit motive. Now, you cannot just say, oh, I have a profit motive, I'm trying to make money in this, and then suddenly it happens. No, you have to be able to show that. Well, the best way to show that is to get an LLC, so you have an official state registration. You separate your finances, so you go open a separate business bank account, and then you keep appropriate accounting records. And I have a wood shop. I like to work in my wood shop, so I'm going to use that as an example. Well, a wood shop can become pretty expensive because you got to buy a table saw, you got to buy a miter saw, you got to buy, all these tools. So you're going to have somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 in tools. Then anytime you make something, you got to go buy supplies for it. And so, the wood costs money, the paint costs or the varnish costs money, the polyurethane, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into making anything. And the same thing, like if you have chickens, you got to buy the chickens, you got to have the coop, you got to have the feed. There's all these things that you have to do to have chickens. If you're into painting, you got to, buy the canvas, you got to buy the art, the paint, and the art supplies. Um, and so there's typically all these things have quite a bit of expenses that you're spending money on that would result in a loss. So if you are able to create an LLC, separate your personal finances from your business finances and keep appropriate accounting records, and then you do have to show some form of revenue. So you do sell a painting, you do sell eggs, you do sell the woodworking stuff you on. You get some advertising income from your YouTube channel. Whatever it is you do, it does need to show some sort of revenue. Now there are some ways that you can uh, play with revenue. And if you have a question about that, reach out to me and we can set up a consultation call. But ultimately, you have to show some revenue, and then because you're keeping appropriate accounting records and you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's, you can show that, this might not be producing money right now, but it would be my lifelong goal that someday I get to run my hobby completely to fund my entire life, pay my bills so that I don't have to work this W-2 job. That might not ever happen, but that is the long-term goal. So I've set things up appropriately to be able to show that is my goal. And now I have a for-profit business. Well, like in my wood shop, I get to write off my $5,000 in tools, and all my Home Depot and Lowe's trips just became a business deduction. And so now I take all those expenses, I deduct them against what revenue I did make by selling on eBay or at the farmer's market. And now I show I have a $5,000 to $10,000 loss that is a legitimate loss, business loss. Well, that deducts against my W-2 wages, and now I get a refund. Um, I see this happen all the time. People buy an RV, they end up not using it very much, so they're renting their RV through a short-term rental company. That's one way you can do this. There's all different ways you can do this, but basically you can create a business losing money that deducts against your W-2 wages, and suddenly you're getting refunds instead of owing money to the government. So that's just a quick way that you can do some tax planning to lower your overall taxes due, even though all you have is a W-2 job. Now, unfortunately, if there is nothing you can do to create a side business, then and all you are is going to be a W-2 employee. Your taxes are what your taxes are. There's nothing you can do to change that. There's a couple of things that you can play around with, usually through employee benefit packages that will help lower your year-to-year taxes. But for the most part, a W-2, as it is reported to the IRS, there's no changing it. And you put it into your 1040, it spits out how much you go in taxes, it deducts what you've already prepaid, and then you either do a refund or you owe money to the government. The only way you can change that is by creating some sort of secondary activity that results in a loss. So anyway, I hope this video is beneficial to somebody. If you have any questions, feel free to post them as a comment and we can address your questions and concerns there. Have a wonderful weekend and I'll see you next week.